Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am Mac, and welcome to Mac's Movie Reviews. Today, we have an interesting movie. I quite literally, like a couple hours ago, had the pleasure, if you want to call it that, of rewatching Infinity Pool because my girlfriend recommended that I make a movie review on it first. And to be quite honest, it's one of the weirdest, dumbest movies we've ever seen, but that's what makes it all the better for this. But before we get into plot and stuff like that, I really quickly want to say that if you don't really like disturbing movies, then I probably wouldn't recommend this movie to you because it's a little bit disturbing. Also, I wouldn't recommend kids watch it. It's weird. It's really weird. There's a lot of stuff that you don't want to have to explain. And honestly, if you're just not a fan of horror movies, it's not like super scary or anything, but there are a couple jump scares and stuff like that. Anyway, with that out of the way, let's get into the plot, shall we? So, the movie starts off, and you are introduced to James and his wife, Em. James is a writer, but has been suffering from writer's block and took his wife Em to a resort on an island to try and draw inspiration from the locals and the culture and stuff like that. So anyway, they go down to get breakfast and they run into Gabby and her husband Albin. Now Gabby is a fan of James's books. She runs into him, she's like, "Hey, I'm a fan of your books. When are you going to write the next one?" and stuff like that, and invites James and Em to have dinner with her and Albin. So they go and they have dinner, and this is kind of where you learn about the characters. You learn about James being a writer and the writer's block. You find out that Gabby is an actress who specializes in not being able to do anything right. She tries to cut a bread roll, and she sits there for like 2 minutes trying to cut the damn bread roll, but she just like keeps slamming her knife into it. It's weird. And you find out that the reason that James is able to stay afloat despite not having written in so long is because his wife, Em, is pretty wealthy. Well, anyway, the movie makes it very clear that it wants you to be disturbed because there's a lot of weird camera angles and some lighting effects that are kind of weird that happen throughout the movie at random. But it cuts to a scene where Gabby and James are dancing and Albin and Em are just kind of watching and not really doing anything. But it then smash cuts to the next day, and Em is asking James why they agreed to go hang out with this couple again because they don't really know them. And James is like, "Oh well, we hung out with them last night. What harm could it do?" So they meet up with Gabby and her husband Albin, and they rent a car from a guy. And the guy's not really important, but he does come back in a little bit. Anyway, they aren't supposed to leave the resort grounds. Tourists are not supposed to leave the resort grounds. However, they decide to take the car and leave the resort grounds. You find out about the country being kind of low income, a poor country with a high crime rate, and that's why they are supposed to stay in the resort grounds. That way the locals don't try to attack them or anything. But Gabby and Albin take James and Em to this coast and a beach, and it's a really pretty view and stuff like that. But, you know, it's a little weird. The movie's weird. Anyway, it cuts to a scene where Albin is making food, and James and Gabby are just kind of staring at each other. But Albin asks if James wants a sausage or whatever, and stuff goes on. But then James runs off and starts taking a piss, and Gabby walks up behind him, and I shit you not, starts giving him a hand job. A good old reach around Willy Wonka. And I'm gonna be honest with you, James, he goes pretty quick. It doesn't take too long. But anyway, that's completely irrelevant. So he gets a hand job from Gabby, and then it kind of just fast forwards to the night when they're about to leave, and Gabby and Em decide that they are going to nap in the back of the car while Albin drives, but Albin says that he's too drunk to drive, so James offers to drive. While they're driving home, though, the headlights on the car start to flicker. And instead of like pulling over and finding out what's wrong, James just keeps on driving. Headlights are flickering, and then they go out completely. And in horror movie fashion, they come back on, there's a guy walking across the street, and they hit the guy. This is where the movie starts to get really weird. So, James gets out of the car, everybody else is waking up, trying to figure out what's going on. M freaks out, and James is talking about how like they have to call the resort and how they have to call the police, but Gabby's like, no, we can't do that. This place is super corrupt and they will hurt us severely and probably kill us if we do that. So they agree to not really talk about it. Gabby says that her and Albin will handle it in the morning. So they drive back to the resort and they kind of have to coerce the guards to let them back in because they're like, well, we were at the disco and we don't really know how we got out, but we're sorry, please let us back in. So they let them back in and they say, hey, we'll take care of this in the morning. But knock knock knock, morning comes and James and M get arrested. So they're taken to a police station, and this is where you meet Detective Thresh, who basically forces James to do this, but he's like, hey, I'm about to ask you if you rented a car from my uncle, I believe, and you are going to say no, because if you don't, he will get in trouble and bad things will happen to you. And so James is like, yeah, sure, okay, whatever. And then he's like, well, you stole a car and hit and killed someone. And in this country, if you kill someone, their eldest son will kill you. And James obviously is like, what? He's like, I'm about to get killed. And the detective goes, well, there is a thing for tourists specifically, that way they keep coming back. If you pay us a large amount of money, we will make an exact clone of you. Same memories, same looks. It'll believe it is you. Sorry about my phone going off. So, James pays up and decides that he's going to pay the money and have the clone made. So they put him in the cloning machine, I guess. And this is kind of a weird scene because there's a bunch of flashing lights. At some point, there's a hallucination of Gabby dancing naked. I don't really know. And then James wakes up with M sitting there, and M goes, well, they told me that the cloning was successful, but they're waiting for us down in the basement. And they go to the basement, they see the clone, and they're like, wow, it's like an exact match. And of course, since it's a bit of a horror movie, they have to have a jump scare, so the clone kind of jumps up a little bit and is like, ah. It's weird. But then we move on to the execution. So, James and M are forced to watch. They don't want to, but they are forced to watch. So there's the clone of James, and he is tied up, and the family of the person that James killed is sitting there. The son comes up, he has a knife or whatever, and he stabs him like 26 times, I think I counted. I don't know why I counted, but he stabs him like 26 times. M is horrified. M is horrified, she's freaking out and crying, and James, at the very end, right before it cuts to the next scene, starts to smile. And it's kind of weird because, he just watched himself get killed and he starts smiling. Well, then they give James and M the ashes of the dead clone for whatever reason. He says it, I believe he says it as like I can't remember what he calls it, but I also can't remember. I think he said a souvenir. I can't remember what the other word for it is, but anyway, he calls it as like, yeah, this is a souvenir, take it with you. And M is freaking out. She's like, we need to go home. And James reveals that he lost his passport. So he can't get out. And he says, well, if you want to go without me, That's okay. I will get back as soon as I can. But M decides to stay just a little bit longer. I'm going to be honest with you. Understanding what time it is when in this movie is kind of hard because there's a couple points where it's like, oh, we have to leave in 15 minutes. And then it cuts to them laying in bed and it's clearly darker out. And it's like, well, is it nighttime? Did they decide to wait or what? Well, anyway, on his way to, well, not on his way, James decides to go down to the front desk to see if they can help him. And he ends up extending his vacation for another week. And while he's down there, he runs back into Gabby. And Gabby's like, hey, this needs explaining. Come with me. So Gabby takes James to her room with Albin and a bunch of other people. And they're like, hey, all of these people have also had clones made and tortured and stuff like that. And this is where the movie starts to get weird. So there's one guy, and he kind of goes, you know, I'm scared. And everyone's like, well, what are you scared of? And he's like, well, what if they got the wrong one? I think he asked James specifically. He's like, James, do you ever think that they got the wrong one? And the idea is they don't know if they are the clones that were made or the real ones that were cloned. And the others are basically like, well, what does it matter anyway? We have all the same memories. It does not matter. And then that is never explored again. It's brought up that one particular time and then never again. Well, they decide that they are going to have some fun. But James isn't too excited. He goes, takes, and starts washing his face or whatever. And he actually ignores a call from M. M calls him, he ignores it, and then Gabby shows up. And then they kind of threaten James to join them in something. They decide that they are going to rob the owner of the resort because he recently got a medal for stuff. And this is actually where you find out... Oh, actually, completely off topic. The name Infinity Pool does not come up at all in the movie except for one time. There is a scene in that little area there where Gabby is talking about how her and Albin had their first time with the cloning and all that stuff. Albin is like a construction worker. He helped build some of the resort stuff. Well, they were building an infinity pool, which I am going to be honest with you, I had to look up to see what that even was. But they were building an infinity pool, which is just a pool that kind of looks like the water goes over the edge or whatever. And she's like, yeah, it's kind of pervy, had a glass bottom, stuff like that, yada, yada, yada. And anyway, they're like, all right, we're going to go rob this guy because he got a medal and we want that medal. So they go and break into the house, basically. James kind of like pulls at the door a little bit, but he doesn't like pull hard or anything. He just kind of fucking messes around with it, fiddles with it. And then the maid opens the door and freaks out, and James basically just tackles her. Well, then the rest of the group comes in. They find the resort owner and his wife or mistress or whatever getting busy in the room, but they drag him and the girl out and they start ransacking his room looking for the medal. And then there's a couple scenes of nothing really happening. Gabby and James have a moment with a gun. It's kind of weird. And then there's one of the guy's bodyguards who was hiding comes out and starts shooting at them. So Gabby starts shooting back with her gun. Albin gets hit in the leg, and eventually Gabby kills the other guy. One of the girls gets hit. I believe the resort owner gets hit, maybe. I don't know. I think the three people they had all died, and then the bodyguard died, and then Albin got shot in the leg. Well, anyway, they're trying to get Albin out, and they're trying to get Albin out, and James is like, look, my room is right over there. Let's take him to my room. So they take him to the room, and M flips out. She's screaming, and things are getting crazy. And then it cuts. It cuts to all of them in the same prison from earlier. They're just sitting down talking about, I couldn't really tell you. And then the detective comes in, Detective Thresh, and he's like, hey, I've decided to make things interesting this time. And he picks them all up. They're like, ooh, what's going on? And then it kind of is like, wait, we're getting murdered? So they bring him in, set them all down, and, James starts to fight back, and he kind of grabs a knife, and he's, swinging or whatever, and they knock James down and then slit his throat. And then, of course, because it was pretty fucking obvious that it was going to happen, they were all clones. It was all clones. Everybody paid again to have that happen. And so James gets his second urn of ashes, and he goes back, and M is like, I'm leaving. I can't do this. I don't recognize you anymore. I am leaving. So I almost said Emily. M leaves, and then James is outside, just kind of sitting around doing nothing, and Gabby comes up to him. And I guess it's also worth noting, they had these weird masks whenever they robbed the guy. James's mask was fucking something straight out of Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. Like a little pig, twisted ears or whatever. It was weird. Anyway, James is smoking a cigar through his mask. Gabby comes up and is like, hey, what's going on? And he's like, oh, well, M left. And she's like, well, that's probably for the better. And James takes off and he's like, we've been together 10 years. And Gabby, by this point, has all but done the deed with Mr. James. Is like, well, maybe she's just not right for you. And she's like, come with me. And so they go. And this is where shit gets really weird. So they go into Gabby's room, and she's like, this is a drug, and drug use is illegal in this state, but this is considered cultural. And James is like, well, what is it? And she's like, well, it's a hallucinogenic, and it's an aphrodisiac. So James inhales it, and so does Gabby, and they start fucking, like, slamming ham. They start going at it. There's a lot of weird visual effects going on. Everything's weird. So James has now officially cheated on his wife twice, in my opinion. I mean, I would have stopped the hand job personally, but hey, James does James, It was very clear that him and M were having problems. So anyway, they're fucking, and then there's a scene where she's riding him on the bed, and it cuts to, like, it starts panning down his legs, and Albin is, like, grabbing his leg and jerking off. So he's just, like, basically getting kind of cucked, I guess. But then it just smash cuts to, like, a full-on orgy. All of the people from earlier, they, like, robbed the place and had their clones and all that. They're having a straight-up fucking orgy. And it was in this scene that I made a joke about one of the girls having a push-pop nipple. It's not really funny, but it made my girlfriend laugh, and I figured, hey, that's good enough for me. So, it's so fucking weird. Well, anyway, stuff's going on. I don't really remember if there's anything that happens between the orgy and this event, but they say, hey, I guess this is context from earlier. James had told them about his passport being missing and whatnot, and how he couldn't really find it and whatever. And there was a guy who's like, hey, I have connections, I can get you a passport. Well, that same guy comes back up after the orgy and is like, hey, James, we found out that the problem with the passport is Detective Thresh. So, we're going to go give him a piece of our mind so we can go get you your passport, implying that they're going to, like, kidnap him and kill him or whatever. And so James is like, okay, yeah, let's do it. So they go, and they kidnap Detective Thresh. They have, like, a bag over his head and whatnot. They bring him back to the place, and James starts doing more drugs, running around and acting weird, really, really weird. And he starts beating the shit out of him, and then he starts pissing on him. And then Gabby goes down and pulls off the mask to reveal it wasn't actually Detective Thresh, but another clone of James that they had made. So they paid Detective Thresh to make another clone of James, and then James beat the shit out of his clone. So this wakes James up. James is like, whoa, what the fuck is going on here? So he locks himself in the bathroom, and everyone is outside the window, and they're like singing, it's like, ah. And Gabby is like, hey, come out. And I shit you not, I have this wrote down. She says, and I quote, maybe I'll bring the double and you can, maybe I'll go get the double and you can both fuck me, huh? Have you ever tried that? It's like, well, clearly not. He just learned about the doubles 3 days ago. And it's so fucking stupid. Well, anyway, James then grabs his passport, which apparently he had hidden just to tell M that he didn't have it. But he grabs his passport, and it cuts to the next morning where he's getting on a bus so he can go and leave, basically. But the bus is driving, and guess who? Gabby, Albin, and the others kind of pull up. So they're driving in the bus, and Gabby and Albin pull up, and she's like, James, and he kind of ignores them a little bit, so they fall back, and they pull up again, and Gabby points a gun at him and starts shooting. Well, she only shoots once, but she shoots, and James like kind of ducks out of the way or whatever, and the bus slams on its brakes. So Albin and then the other driver kind of pull up and block the bus off so that the bus can't move. And Gabby is just screaming. She's like, James! And saying all this stuff. And it's like, come out, Jamesy! And it's weird. Well, anyway, James comes out. And she kind of talks to him like a dog. Like, oh, come here, Jamesy! And it's weird. But then it cuts to the two cars behind James, and James is walking, and they're behind them, and Gabby is just laying into him. And then she reveals that she had never actually read James's book. She wasn't a fan, but she had never actually read James's book. And they were only using him for their own amusement, and that they didn't actually have any real interest in him. And James is kind of shocked by this. He's like, oh, what? And they're like, yep, that's how it is. So some more talking happens, and Gabby like drops her bottle of vodka or whatever she has, and she starts kind of trying to grab it, and James like tackles her to try to get the gun, but she gets help from the others, and they kind of just make fun of him. And James takes off running into the woods, and Gabby starts shooting at him, and she eventually hits him in the leg, but he drags himself up and keeps going. He gets to this farmhouse where he sees two girls, and then he passes out. And so it's unclear if he was like drugged or whatever, but he starts hallucinating again. And the kid from earlier, like the person that he killed way at the beginning of the movie, his son, who killed the clone, comes back in his hallucination. And the kid starts strangling him, and then he, like, James, like, peels the kid's face off, and then it's Gabby who's strangling him, and they're laughing at him, and then it turns into M strangling him, and they rip James in half, if that makes sense. In the hallucination, that all happens. But James wakes up and he's like, I need to get out of here. So he starts going out, and of course, they're all there. Headlights come on, and James is confronted once again by all of them. And they decide that they want to have some more fun with James. So they give him a knife, and they say, hey, you're going to kill the dog. What is the dog, you might ask? It's another clone of James. I think it's actually just the clone from earlier, and I'll explain why I think it's just the clone from earlier. Well, anyway, or I guess maybe something, yeah, I could see where this happens. But anyway, I think it's just the clone from earlier, and I'll explain why in a second. Anyway, James is like, no, I'm not going to kill the dog, and eventually he throws the knife, and that's when the clone attacks him. So the clone attacks him, and they wrestle a bit, and the clone starts choking him, but James is somehow able to throw him off, and this scene is kind of weird. He starts punching him a lot, and his, like, eye caves in, and then his, like, bones break out and stuff. It's really fucking weird. Well, anyway, he gets done with that, and Gabby walks over, and he starts crying and is just like whimpering basically, and Gabby's just holding him, and then she legitimately whips out a titty, rubs blood on it, and then has James start sucking on it. And this goes on for a little while. But then it smash cuts to the morning, and all of them are getting on a bus, and they're all, like, it cuts to James packing, and he has 3 urns, which is why I think it's just the clone from earlier that he killed. They had it cremated and gave back to him. Or maybe he had to have another clone for killing a clone, but it's never really said. But he has 3 urns. I think it's just the one from earlier. Anyway, it cuts to them, and they're all, like, normal. They're talking about, like, oh, when you get back, what are you going to do? And stuff like this. They're all with their respective partners and stuff like that. And they're talking to James, like, oh, hey, maybe you can come back next year, and we can hang out again next year. And James is like, yeah, sure. Well, they get to the airport, and James misses his flight. Intentionally. He sits down, and he just stares off into space. And he intentionally misses the flight, and then it cuts to him outside the resort, laying on one of the chairs, and it starts downpouring, and then the movie ends. So, all of that happens, and it's an interesting ride. I will say, if you want to watch a movie and go, what the fuck did I just watch? Then I highly recommend it. It is very good at making you question what you have watched. Let's see. I do plan on doing some other neon films, neon productions, or whatever it is, because I saw a couple trailers that just look terrible. So, I want to watch those. But I mean, that's really all I have to say. Let me see if I had anything else that I wanted to say, because I took notes. Yeah. If I had to rate the movie out of 10, I'd probably give it like a 6. It's alright, you know. There's a lot weird with it. It's not like a movie that I would recommend anybody watch, but it's pretty good. I liked it. And, hey, let me know what you think of these movie reviews. I plan on doing more in the future. At some point, if you've noticed the channel page, the profile picture is me holding up Velocipaster. I'm going to do a review on that one in the future because I want to build up a little bit of a following before I do, because I love that movie and I just want to gloat about it. But anyway, until next time, guys, feel free to check out my other channels, and I don't really have content on them yet, but I will in the future. And until next time, my friends, I will see you. Peace out.